Many people talk about the ups and downs of married life, but no one really prepares you for life after your spouse passes away. Welcome to Widowhood Real Talk with Tina, a safe place for widows, widowers, and their friends and family to talk about love and loss. Find comfort as you listen to honest conversations between Tina and invited guests who've experienced the loss of their forever partner. Share their stories of love, grief, and healing. You are not alone in this journey. Join today's episode and discover a wealth of resources and learn how to connect with others who are traveling the same path. This is Widowhood Real Talk with Tina.
Have you ever wondered how your grief looked different if you and your spouse were divorced? How would you consider if you felt like a widow or widower? What is the difference of losing your parent impact your grief? And what does the word hymns have to do with grief? That's the answer that you will receive in this next conversation with Miss Voss. Let's get into the discussion now. Hello, Alicia. Welcome to the Widowhood.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Aw. So, welcome to the widowhood. Like, what comes to mind when you hear something like that? Like, if I were to see the ticker tape inside your head going widowhood, like, what would that really read?
It almost sounds surreal. To me, it's just, I don't know. I used to think as a kid that that was a word for old people. And ironically, I got married really young. So now I know that's not the case, especially being in the grief space. But yeah, I used to think that was a term for people with a lot of gray hair and up in their 80s and 90s. So,
Wow. It
yeah.
is. It is something. So, seeing yourself in that community, how has that changed the narrative for you?
For me, like I said, it brings everything back into I would say a normal perspective because I'm it. And so now I feel like I can empathize more. I see through different lenses now. So yeah.
Do people think that when you have conversations with people and introducing it or in the conversation that you are a widow, do
Mhm.
you get some response like you thought in your mind as far as, "Oh, you're a widow," and coming to terms with that with people?
Yeah, and then like I said, well, for those that don't know, my ex-husband passed away after we had separated. So it was a little different for me. So me getting married really early on, that was more of a surprise, I think. So then, but yeah, getting the news that he had passed was definitely, a shocker for sure.
And thank you for mentioning the dynamics of your situation,
Hmm.
because if you've been married to someone and they pass, it
Hmm.
still impacts you. Where some people may go, well, they were divorced. I don't even know why
Right.
you're talking about it anymore. What
Mhm.
would you say to someone that made a statement like that?
I think it's selfish because that's just like saying if you had a child that passed away, well, you had another child, so you should be okay, with this new child. No, each grief process is different. And so you're gonna process it no matter what. It's still a part of you. That's a part of your story, a chapter in your book, I feel like. So yeah, I
When
look
you
at
okay,
go
when you say process, instead of that generic term,
mhm,
what does that grief look like? And I want to have this conversation because there's someone listening to this discussion where their spouse, they're divorced, and they pass and they feel like they can't grieve because they were divorced and they don't have the right to be sad or
mm,
they don't have the right to elicit these emotions, but they exist. So,
mhm.
can we dive into what that really looked like for you on a granular level?
Sure. And I'll start off by saying just the separation and divorce, that was a grieving process also. So just having to separate from something that you're used to, your day-to-day life, that starts the process. So it's almost like you move from one grief to another grief. So once I had, started processing that, like, wow, I'm divorced, and he never remarried and neither did I. So when I found out he had passed away, I felt like you were just saying initially. It was just like that. Do I have the right, to grieve? And then I had to give myself permission because no one else was gonna respect my grieving process if I didn't go through it, myself. And so I took a few days really to get past the shock. I think it was more just a numbness initially. And then once I realized, like, this is it, this is final, like, no more, then I had to start going through the stages. I didn't do it depression or, anxiety or anything, but it was more bargaining like, wow, I wonder, if this had been this way, if this had been fixed, if, his life would have ended up this way, so you go through those, stages or what have you. But I would just say to the person, if you're not together and that person dies, give yourself grace to grieve. And I know that sounds like cliche, but you have the right. It is your right to process your grief, even if you're not together. And for me, I feel so free in the fact that we had some issues, of course, like any marriage would, but forgiveness was a big factor for me. And me forgiving him before he ever asked, which he asked me for forgiveness 2 weeks before he passed away. I had already forgiven him. We were friends. We had had multiple discussions about different things. That made my process a lot easier. I was able to say, I forgave him. We were in a good space. And I mean, I felt so free, but I still felt the pain of like, man, he's not here, you know? So,
Thank you for that. And you
mhm,
bring up a good point about the grief before the passing.
mhm,
So let's circle back to that because grief is more than the loss of a loved one. Grief, and you mentioned something that you were used to and you reached out for and it wasn't there.
mhm.
Well, how did you guys meet?
So, I am a hairstylist. I've always been in the beauty industry, so the core of who I am is everything beauty. Uh,
Okay.
and so at the time, he was going to a barbershop, a famous barbershop in my town. And at the time, I didn't have any children. He did have children, but my nephews and my nieces were like my children. So I had my nephews in this barber show, and we were all at the rehearsals together. And I noticed he kept watching me, but it was so many men in the building, like, I just honestly wasn't focused on one. So, fast forward, there were, like, 3 or 4 rehearsals and then the big show, and I guess he figured if I don't say anything now, I may never see her again. So, I always laughed because I was standing there talking to a high school friend of mine that I had ran into. He was actually at the show, and he stood behind him and waited, like, I'm going to talk to her no matter what. So, I felt like I told him, I said, "You were really rude," but, he waited and after the guy left, he, approached me and, we talked or whatever. And he was very, very handsome man, just, gorgeous. And so I gave him a hard time because I felt like, what do you want from me? Like, I'm not this beauty queen that you probably could get. So I'm thinking, what? And so I gave him a hard time for about 6 or 7 months until I realized, okay, he's serious. And then I started to soften up for him. So yeah.
And what did softening up look like? What did you change?
I'm still, I think, a tough nail, so I started accepting, like, more dates because he would bring gifts by, and I'm just like, you know, everything probably a woman would want. I was just like, that's too easy. So I would just wait, and I would take it. I would give him a little smile or whatever, but I'm like, "Okay, go to church with me." And then he would do that, and then I'm like, "Okay." So then we became, I guess, official. So he was like, "I want us to date more, and I want us to," and so it went from there. We went, lots more dates, and then eventually our engagement and wedding was nothing typical. To me, I call it a Vegas wedding because we didn't do anything official. At the time, he was getting redeployed to go back to he was a serviceman, so he had to go away to Iraq. And so
Mhm.
he was just like, let's go ahead and make sure that everything is in place. And so that's how we ended up getting married. So
Okay.
yeah. Yeah.
I w So I was in the Army for 21 years, so sometimes those things can be that
Yeah.
whole dynamics of that
Mhm,
environment. When you think about the dating,
mhm.
then the divorce, what are some lessons that you learned about yourself as you reflect back on that?
I feel like they were almost one and the same because I still had that sh I guess that I call it pride It was a lot of pride that I had in the beginning. Maybe walls were put up just because I feared getting hurt, and so I was trying to protect myself from getting hurt, which I know now I've used that in my grief processes with my mom. Just always trying to protect myself from things or try to shield myself from things before they happen. And so I did that in the dating phase. And then even with the divorce, I'm just like, okay, well, I see this is not working. So let me start to detach my feelings now. Let me start to remove feelings now. So if this goes awry or if we don't stick together, I'm not hurt. We'll just go our separate ways. And I've always kind of processed things that way. I don't know where it came from. So I feel like dating and divorce ended up being the same way. So much so before I began to process my forgiveness with him, I didn't even know I was angry or I hated him. I had to sit in that and I'm like, oh, like I never knew I could hate someone. And so one day, ironically, I was sitting in church and the person that was talking about like forgiveness, and I was like, that's me. I need to forgive. And that was the day I did it. He had no idea that I was forgiving him that day of something he had never, requested me, or asked for forgiveness for.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm gonna ask how, because most people think this person has to come to me,
Mhm.
ask for my forgiveness, and then I will bestow my forgiveness upon
Mhm.
them, and then we walk away, and we're gonna have this wonderful relationship because I have forgiven them. What did it really look like for you?
So it's a lot of details and a lot of things to unpack. But in the grand scheme, what I'll say, if you're a spiritual person or you're a person that believes in God, I have to look at how God treats me. And so I had to say to myself, you've been forgiven for a lot of things. You're not perfect. So sometimes you have to extend that same grace to other people. And I had to reprocess things like, are you still alive? Do you still have this? Do you still, it's okay. It's okay to move on. And in order to move on, you have to forgive him, and that frees you. And so that's what I did. I had to look at it from, and I like to use analogies. If you have a child that does something wrong, if they come to you and they ask you for forgiveness, do you just keep hammering them? Do good parents keep hammering it over their children's head, or at some point it's okay. Thank you for coming to me, or I didn't have to come to you to discipline you. You came to me. I appreciate that, so I'm just going to let it go. And that's what I did. I just, in my head, I just looked at it as my father has forgiven me and I forgive him before he asked. And it was definitely freeing. It freed me up a
I
lot.
was just gonna say, when someone hears freeing, like, what was that? Or how did that to articulate that a little bit more?
I didn't process anger so much. I felt like I was on the edge of like everything was just, it got on my nerves. It made me angry. I treated people how I felt like I was being treated. If you did something that resembled what I was going through, then I automatically was harsh toward, other people that had absolutely nothing to do with my situation. And so once I let that go and started, sitting in the freedom of forgiveness, patience came in, forgiveness with other people, not being so edgy, things like that. It just, I had more grace for people.
Hmm.
So.
Thank you. You mentioned about your mother briefly. Can you share a little bit more about her and how that relates to your grief?
Yeah, so my mom passed 7 years ago, so it was May of 2018, and I felt like because I processed relationships that the way I mentioned that when it came to my mom's, passing, I started to try to protect myself from the hurt of losing my mother, and I compartmentalized a ton. Like, I just kept saying, "If I do this, if I work more, if I go here more, if I do this more, I won't feel any pain or the pain won't be as intense." And that was far from the case. So, it just piles the emotions just pile up until one day it just explodes. And so like I said, I did that in relationships. It was more of a protection mode. And because I'm a hairstylist, again, I like to use analogies. And I say, like, what I have here is a natural hairstyle. I've been growing this out for maybe, yeah, yours is beautiful. This
I
is
like the
about
color on yours. That's what I'm thinking.
thank you, thank you. I try to play around with it because, this is about 2 years worth of growth, and someone else may have 2 years worth of growth, and it may be your length. Each person's process is gonna be different, and what I did when I first got this hairstyle was I would throw wigs on it all the time, just covering it up. We call it protective hairstyles because we're not ready to confront what's underneath. I was not ready. And the lady who styles my hair, she kept saying, "Trust the process. Trust the process." And so in grief, I had to figure out you have to trust the process. You can't keep covering it up because underneath is still the same thing there. You're gonna have to deal with it. And that's just how I process things. And then later on in life, I realized these are the consequences of covering up or compartmentalizing. Now I have sometimes short term memory loss because I buried everything with that grief. So much so, like I'll have a thought and I can't get it out. I'm like, where's the thought? It's buried in that compartmentalization because I tried to suppress everything. So that's how I've, in the beginning, processed my mother's grief because it was so traumatic. It was unexpected and traumatic. And when I say unexpected, it was because my mom was really healthy. She passed in a 6-month time frame, but she was the picture of health. So no one expected her to die for a long time.
When you think of your mom, what are some memories that come to mind for you?
Oh boy. um, my mother was, I say is, the most perfect example of a person. Always made sure that she did the right things in front of us. She
Mhm.
never, if she gave you her word, she stuck to it. And these are happy tears. Like I've cried all the sad tears. These are happy tears. I've suppressed for so long, so now I just cry every time I talk about her. But she was a person of her word. She was integral, great mother, great grandmother. And I know everyone can say that probably. Most people can say that about their mom, but I just always felt like, gosh, are there any other mothers out there like you? Like it was just, as children, we thought she was perfect. And that's the honest to God's truth. We never saw her do anything. Of course, as we got older, we realized, okay, well, maybe she was so perfect, but really, I mean, I can't really say anything bad about, she had nothing bad to say. Like, she cooked great. She was a great wife. Just an entrepreneur. She took nothing and built businesses. She just was everything. And so I have great memories in every arena you can think about. And the most important was she introduced us to God. She made sure that she put that in front of us and live the example. We have so many examples out now that you're just questioning, like, it was never questionable when it came to her. She was serious and intentional about everything she did. And I think that's why I'm able to even speak to you because I'm not a social media person. I'm not an in front of the camera person, but she was bold and tenacious. And I feel like in order to honor her, I have to do what I'm doing.
Okay, you say you're not a social media
I'm not.
person,
I
but
promise.
so where can people find you, Miss Not a Social Media
Oh
Person?
my gosh, you'll see once you look at my socials. But, I started a YouTube channel. I do wanna get more intentional about that platform. So I'm on YouTube. It's Good Grief, Great Morning on YouTube. I am on TikTok. It's Good Grief on TikTok, and then on Instagram, Good Grief, Great Morning, and then, my Facebook page is just Good Grief.
And what does that title mean for you, or how did you come about using that?
Initially, I thought I had made up Good Grief. Honestly, I was sitting in my salon one day and I was just like, I wanna do something. Like, I feel like I should do a T-shirt or something. I had no idea I would even, get to this point or this space. And so I was like, I want my grief to be good. I don't want to be sad all the time. I don't wanna be depressed all the time. My mother would want us to represent her, in a space where and again, everyone processes grief different, but she would look at me and say, "Girl, let's go. Come on. Like, don't sit in that for too long. Let's go." So I wanted my grief to be what I thought was good. And so I was like, oh man, I should do a t-shirt or something just saying good grief. Again, I didn't know it was already out there. So one day I was typing it and I'm like, oh man, somebody already has good grief. So I was thinking, what about mourning? And I thought about fresh new start. And I said, I'm going to add mourning on there. And when I thought about great morning, I'm like, I want to wake up every morning with a fresh start. Maybe I was sad last night. Maybe I was sitting in my feelings, but today I want great morning. But I have it spelled Mourning. So it's just a play on letters or what have you. But that's just where the title came from.
And so somebody that's not a social media, what are we doing on YouTube, ma'am?
So because it's a platform where you can do longer content, I started there, had absolutely no idea what I was doing. Like if you go look at my videos, you can tell the difference in the earlier ones versus the later ones. And I'm still,
I'm about
not
to say the same with me too. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm over here not knowing what I'm doing too.
yeah, it's a struggle. But I'm determined and I'm like, I'll just every video will get better and better. So but yeah, I want to do longer content there because sometimes with the TikToks and the Instagrams, they want to limit it to a certain amount of time. So with YouTube, with YouTube, people are actually searching for your content. They're typing it in and looking for you. So, and they want to see longer content. So I really want to focus more on that platform.
Thank you. And when you started this, what did you want to so you went from in the hair salon,
Mhm.
thinking of good grief, and now evolved to good grief, good morning. What is your goal? What are you looking to come from all of this? And why are you doing it?
My mission is really to help. I felt like when I started out, that was why I was compartmentalizing because I didn't see help around me. And it could have been just because I wasn't looking. I felt like I was a stranger in this foreign land and I was the only one there. And nobody really reached out. They just, I guess, wait for you to say something. So my goal is to say something to people so they know it's safe for them to say something. So I was sitting down one day, I was just journaling and I'm like, I'm going through this, but I want to help someone else. And so I put help. And then I was like, what else do I want to do? I want to encourage. I wrote that down. What else do I do? I want to be motivated. So I want other people to be motivated. I wrote that down. What else? And I put support. Not really putting any of the letters together. And when I put it together, it came out hymns, which is where the shirt came from. And
Okay.
so it's for help, encourage, motivate, and support. And then I'm always looking stuff up. So when I looked it up, it said to basically sew together or to close up frayed edges. And I was like, that's perfect. People are unhinged. They feel fragile. And if I can help encourage, motivate, and support them, I'm just taking a little needle and thread and just trying to help sew them back together, those broken hearts, however, whatever that looks like. And people have had, their opinions on you should niche down. And I think that's great, especially what you're doing. But I felt like I want to help everybody. I have a son that struggled with with my mom leaving. And I'm like, how do I reach out to people like him? I have nieces and nephews. They're struggling with losing my mom. How do I reach? So I'm like, if I can help as much as, I can or as many people as I can. That's my goal. I haven't been able to niche down yet. So
That's okay. Where can someone find your shirt if they wanted to purchase that?
I kind of had them ordered. I ordered a bunch of them, and I'm supposed to be setting up a shop so I can but it's never been about money, honestly. I just like it as a conversation piece. People ask me, "Oh, do you sew?" I'm like, "No." And then I can explain to them. But
Okay.
that's coming soon. I haven't gotten everything together yet as far
Okay.
as
But if they wanted to contact you, is there an email address or
sure.
what
Yep, it's
email?
good grief, great morning. And morning is spelled Mourning at gmail.com. So good grief, great morning at gmail.com.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So your mom passed, and your mother's name, if you share it with us?
Yeah, it's Carol Patterson.
Carol passed in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And your ex-spouse, what year did he pass?
2021.
2021.
Mhm.
And when did the Good Grief, Good Morning start?
It started, probably around 2019. It was
Mhm.
kind of when COVID was beginning. I was at home more, able to start sitting in my thoughts, which I think everybody had a chance to do that. And journaling, like journaling just started, to be therapy for me. And that's basically when it started, about 2019.
Okay.
Mhm.
And making videos and sharing. And were you a person that you said, I think in the beginning, this is not your mode of operation? So what makes a person that's quiet, kind of to themselves, be talking to the whole world about the most devastating experience in their life?
So I was sitting there one day and I kept seeing other people share their stories about different things. It could be being molested or being abused. And I kept saying, I'm no different. I have a story. And then I started thinking, you love your mom so much. Does she deserve to be hidden? Do you want the world to know about her? It was more about me not wanting her to be forgotten. I did not want her to be forgotten. And I'm just like, you're the voice. Like right now, nobody else is speaking. Don't let her memory die out. And that was where it started. And I said, okay, well, if I can start here, maybe someone else will make the light shine on their loved one, and that'll be therapy for them. So it was therapy for me while trying to be, a servant to other people. That was basically what my goal was, but never comfortable in front of the camera. It
Oh.
takes a lot for me to I still haven't gone live yet just because, you know, um, I'm not 100% comfortable yet.
Well, then that means you'll have to come join me and we'll have a conversation and do that.
Well, I do. If I'm with someone else, it's okay, but just me talking, sometimes I feel ill-equipped.
Oh, then you're in the right spot. Because I think people that are too confident or too with that are in a different space and it comes off like that. And
Mhm.
that's not welcoming.
Not at all. Not at all.
So what I also hear, grief will change you. Do you feel like grief has changed you? If so, how?
Oh, man, where do I start? Well, one thing, it's made me a little more vocal. I feel like it's made me an introverted extrovert, if that
Do
makes sense.
explain. No, I don't. Let's go.
So I think before I was more outgoing, like I love being around people. And I still do, but I think I take things a little more seriously now. So I tend to shy away from people. I feel like be about your business, get things done because time is short. Only speak when it's going to be profitable to someone, if it's going to help someone. Laugh, joke, have a good time, but get this done. I've changed in that way. Before, I think I was just flying by the seat of my pants. It was just now I'm very intentional about everything. I feel like I'm more protective of my children. I feel like I don't want anything to happen to me because I don't want them to feel what I'm going through. So sometimes I feel like I'm a little more nervous, a little more edgy, when it comes to, or on edge, I should say. I've gained a ton of weight. I don't eat any more than I did. I probably eat less. So I think the stress of grief has changed me. But one thing I can say is, and I mention this a lot, I am closer to God. I used to rely on my mother's prayers and her spirituality, and now I have to get it for myself. So I'm also intentional about that. I'm growing more in God and my faith because I don't have her to lean on, anymore.
Hmm. What I hear is death is imminent and you not wasting no time.
None. None.
And for someone that sees themselves different than when their loved one was here, what would you say to them if you happen to bump into them in the cookie aisle and it just happens to strike up a conversation and they say, I just don't feel like the same person anymore since they died?
Mhm. I would say, and I've had that question before. I had someone say, "You seem so confident. How do you gain your confidence back?" And what I told them, I said, "It's a lot of different things you have to think about or you wanna consider. One, make sure you're doing it for you. Don't let the outside pressures of people determine what your confidence looks like." Because again, like I said, I used to be outgoing. People can say, "Well, you're not confident because you're in the house or you're." My confidence is redefined. It's repackaged. I'm confident about new things now. I have a new normal. So it doesn't mean I don't have confidence. So I tell them, be careful saying that you don't have confidence. It just looks different. And just the other thing that I used to think is, well, if I don't do this, am I forgetting about my mom? If I move on, if I do this, am I forgetting about my ex-husband? And you have to live. You have to live on. They're gone. Is nothing that we can do about that. So it's our responsibility to live on. And what that looks like is going to be an individualized thing. Maybe the fact that you're in the grocery store today, you hadn't done that in 2 weeks. Give yourself, a pat on the back. You've done well today. Your confidence looks different. So don't beat yourself up. Give yourself grace, is what I try to tell people.
Thank you.
Mhm.
When you hear someone talking about grief now,
Mhm.
compared to when your mother or your ex-husband was alive, and you hear those words, does it impact you to the heart differently than it did before?
Oh, yeah. Um, Even when I go to funerals now, I find myself thinking about them. Before I would go to a funeral and I was laser focused on, the family and the person they lost, but sometimes I find my mind drifting off to them. So you definitely look at grief a lot different. I just never in life thought that I would feel this, you know, the weight of grief, especially from someone like my mom. And, to be fully transparent, we thought my dad would pass before my mom. My dad is 90. He'll be 90 in a few weeks and still moving around. He's still the women love him. He loves, company and companionship. And he was the one that had like a few health issues, and so we were preparing ourselves and our hearts for my dad. So to have the impact of my mom who was healthy, it just lets you know life does what life does, and God is ultimately in control. So I look at grief so much different. Like you just don't know who and when. And no matter how much you prepare, you're never going to be fully prepared. So it hits different though. It hits different.
Were your parents together when your mom
They were.
passed?
Yep, they were. They were. Over
And
50 years.
wow,
Mhm.
in 50 years, what does it look like as the daughter watching your dad's grief? How does that show up for him? Or do you ever get a glimpse of it?
Boy. Yeah, initially, I had to find my new identity and I had to allow him. I felt like I'm the baby, so I've always been the daddy's girl. So as soon as my mom, passed away, I immediately rushed in to do everything that she would have done. And just to give you a quick background, my mom was she was the matriarch of the family. My dad he's the type, he's gonna say, "Here's my check, give me enough for gas, snacks. I'm going to watch Cowboys and I'm good." My mom, she's doing the banking stuff. She's just gonna do all the things. So I did not think he would survive without her. I'm just like, how is he gonna make it? Very smart man, but his education stopped at an eighth grade level just to that time, due to that time they had to do some different things, worked for different sharecroppers and things. So he didn't get a full education, but they balanced each other. Like it just, for me to see that, it was always amazing. So I felt like, how is he going to survive without her? So I put my identity in making sure he was good, trying to create an identity for him. And he was trying to create a new identity. And it was a tug of war because I'm like, "Well, no, don't go here. How are you gonna do that by yourself?" And he's thinking, "Well, I can do this." So it created a little resentment within me because I felt obligated to honor my mother by creating his identity instead of giving him the space to create his own. So now, he's good. I've given him the space. I still do certain things because he doesn't cook, so I make sure that I cook for him and do all the laundry and things, but he's got his own identity, and I mean, it's great. It's great. His doctor's, visits are great. Like, his blood pressure and stuff is doing good, and that was the struggle he was having before. So now I'm like, "Okay, well, maybe just him getting out and creating his own identity has helped."
Wow. Thank you
Mhm.
for sharing that because one of the things that can be very stressful is when a family member passes and we all have different connections.
Mhm.
relationship with that family member, and our grief populates differently. And
Yes.
what I heard you saying is you were trying to have your dad's grief show up in a particular way,
Yes.
and when it didn't, you were like, "But what are we doing
Right.
here?" So now we're trying to redirect him, and he's like, "I'm grown, ma'am. I'm doing it
Yes.
the way I need to." And when
Mhm.
you finally relinquished trying to control it, there became a place of peace in all of that.
It Yep. That's so true. That's exactly how it panned out. And I always say our grief, our trauma, it helps people sometimes and you don't know it. I would share with a friend of mine, "Hey, I don't like the fact that my dad is doing this now. I don't like the fact that he's going here. He's so, he's older." And she would always say, "Girl, leave your daddy alone. Leave." And I would get mad because I'm thinking, you're supposed to take my side. So here we are, fast forward 7 years ago. She literally called me last week and she said, "I hope you're okay with me sharing this with you." She shared my story with a friend of hers who just lost her mom. And she
Mm.
said, "I shared with her the situation with your dad and how he was, gaining his own wings and flying." And she said, she got mad at me when I told her initially. She said, but she came back and said, "Thank you for sharing that story about your friend's mom and dad because I now have peace about my mother and my dad's situation." And I'm like, it made me smile. Sometimes you get angry about certain things and you want people to take your side, but you don't know, how it's going to help and who it's going to help later on.
Thank you. Have you received messages from people, listened to your videos or anything like that? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, that's what keeps me going, because grief is such a sensitive topic. Sometimes I feel like if I don't get the right amount of views, I'm like, "Girl, stop. People don't wanna hear this. Don't." And every time that happens, it's almost like God is like, "No, go check this inbox or check." And when I do, I see certain messages that just stand out. And I got one a few weeks ago. I think I posted about it. I was really struggling with what was going on with in Texas and feeling like I couldn't do anything. I felt overwhelmed. And it was like God was saying, "Do what you can do in your little circle." And I reached out and sent a text message to someone, and she lost her fiance. He was tragically killed in a car accident. And I reached out to her. I sent her a text message basically saying, "Hi, I don't want anything. I just want to say, I'm praying for you. I hope today is okay." And I just encouraged her in her grief. And she sent back a text message and said, "I had just gotten out the shower and I was bawling. I was saying, 'God, where are you? I feel abandoned.'" And she said, "This could not have come at a better time." So now I'm bawling because I'm like, it's nothing I feel like in my own strength. But if we can just simply reach out, just simply check on people. I've coined the phrase live paycheck to paycheck, not financially, but emotionally. Basically, check on yourself, pay attention to your emotions every day, all day, if you can, and then pay attention to other people. Check on other people. And you'll never, if everybody does that, I think we would all be okay. And so that's the reason I keep going. When I get text messages and responses like that, I'm like, okay. I mean, if I'm doing it for the one, then I'll keep doing it for the one.
Wow, thank you.
Mhm.
When so what does this look like now from 2022 to here we are 3 years later in this process? What do you think about what it is you're doing and how it's impacting people?
So in the beginning, I think, and I still don't always know the direction I'm going, but in the beginning, I felt like this is just, it's so much. It's so many hurting people. But that was why I wanted to leverage social media because if it's shared or if it's reposted or what have you, it's helping people. But I just keep saying take one step at a time. While I'm helping people, like I said, it's therapy for me. So as long as I'm continuing to do what I think is supporting people, I'm gonna keep having therapy. I have a daily therapy session with myself and helping other people. I've done therapy, I've sat in front of people, and it's helped. I've sat in group sessions, very helpful. But when I hear that it's helping other people, it helps me because I'm like, I'm not alone, and I'm glad that they feel like they're not alone. So I would love for this to be a nationwide thing. Like I would love for people to start small groups and just keep helping. That's just my thing. Your platform is amazing, and things like that is what helps people. It really does. People that feel like they're not safe, they're not able to, and that was one of the things the young lady said. She said, "I felt like I couldn't talk to anybody. Nobody understood." And as a matter of fact, she called me one day and she had me on FaceTime and I could see in the background people were coming up hugging her and she was just smiling. And I was like, wow, she smiled. This is the performance, not saying performance in it, but this is what she has to do every day. But she was going home and she said, I stay in a dark place. I live in a dark place. So she was glad to be able to have someone reach out to her and to be able to open up and talk about her grief. And there's so many more out there we just don't know about or haven't reached yet.
And I would agree with that. The idea of being alone in a crowd of people, the idea of being alone and people around. When you hear that, what comes to mind for you?
Sadness. That's the one thing that really makes me sad is feeling like people don't know where to go. They don't know what to do or they feel trapped because I was there. And I feel like I want them to feel the freedom that I felt once I started talking. Once I started opening up and being receptive to outside resources. And sometimes they just don't know. So it does make me sad to know that people don't have a clue or they feel like no one understands. So yeah, that bothers me a lot. A
When
lot.
you thought about what made you wanna have this conversation with me?
My hope is that something that I say or something that you say when it gets out, that someone can say, "Oh, okay. So there are safe spaces. There are places that I can go to. I'm not going through this by myself. Oh, okay. Well, I suppressed my grief. I compartmentalized my grief. I thought I was the only one. I'm not." And then sometimes that just lets them know, okay, well, there are other people out there like me. I'm not an alien out here, in this world. So there are support groups that you know, you can connect with.
It is amazing to think in the history of humanity, people are dying.
Yeah,
This is not a new concept,
right.
but we seem to be so bad about being transparent or being
Mm.
vulnerable into receiving help. Why do you think that is?
I think, culture, especially in men, like, they have been told, "You don't cry about this, you're a boy," or even certain family dynamics, "Don't you cry or this is gonna happen." So we've been programmed to think, you can't let your feelings out because either you're a wimp or you're gonna get in trouble. So it's not safe to open up. Or don't tell your business. So you think, okay, this is my business, so I can't tell it. Um, or if I tell, someone's gonna look at me like something is wrong with me, even as an adult. And I was using the analogy one day to someone. I said, "Have you ever been to a comedy show?" And she said, "Yeah." I said, "Have you laughed so hard that you've cried?" And she said, "Oh my gosh, yes." I said, "Did anybody say you're a punk? You're a wimp?" I said, "No. You were allowed to cry without thinking about anything. You laughed so hard that you cried with no judgment. Why what those are the same tears. So why is it that you get judged for crying about grief or opening up about trauma, but not at a comedy show?" You gotta make it make sense. Like you should feel just as safe. So I think it's a cultural thing, or things that's been embedded in our mind or taught to us at an early age that stay away from that. Don't do that. Don't do this. And so you grow up as an adult thinking, well, I have to stay in that same mindset. And it's not true.
That is not true. So you are breaking some of those bad cultural norms as it relates to profound grief. When you thought about having this conversation, which I thank you for having, were there some particular points or some other things that you wanted to make sure that we spoke about?
I think we covered it all. The thing I really wanted to hone in on was connection, making sure people get connected and knowing we say this all the time, you're not alone. And there are so many people out there that even contemplate taking their life. So we don't want you to be in a space of darkness thinking that there's no one out there because there are plenty people that are willing and ready to support you. You're not by yourself. Every scenario someone has been through somewhere. You just have to take a step in, where do I go to get help? What's comfortable for me? And then just staying confident, knowing what your confidence is and what it looks like, and knowing that it's redefined, like I said, or repackaged. It doesn't have to look like what other people think. Yeah, I believe we've covered everything, but just keep living, keep living. I tell people, if you take your life, that is a permanent solution for a
Mhm.
temporary situation. So don't take your life. Just there is help. There are resources out there.
Thank you. I have asked you a lot of questions. Any questions you wanna ask me?
Um, well, look, I feel like I know most of your business. But no, how did you or do you feel like you still have moments that you compartmentalize? And if you have, do you have any residual effects from that? Like what do you deal with now from that if you do?
When I hear those term departmentalize, I hear, am I pushing the grief away and putting it aside and not dealing
Suppressing.
with it?
Yeah. Did you do
No,
beginning? Okay.
polar opposite. My
Okay.
mouth was going. It was
Okay.
like a yada, 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 yada. I consider myself, I guess, a unicorn as it comes to relating to grief. My
Mhm.
family and friends showed up from the moment my husband passed, and they have been on deck ever since.
Oh,
When I started my podcast, the first people I had a conversation with were my siblings. The next group were my close friends because they were on ground zero with this scenario of my husband passing unexpectedly on vacation. And there may have been a small part in the beginning where I felt like maybe I was talking too much or maybe I'm oversharing. And my youngest sister go, your whole husband died. You need to talk about it. So that cut all those umbilical cords, a way of talking about not sharing. Because one of my girlfriends, she's actually on the board of Widowhood Real Talk with Tina. She said, I had to know what
mm,
this was. I had to know how bad this was because I'm your friend and I love you. And if you're going to talk and you're going to share, then that lets me know what this looks like and why you're hurting and why I'm different and all those things relate to that.
mhm,
So, no, it is now the 8th year, of the passing of my late husband.
mm,
And though I hold grief differently, I still hold grief.
mhm,
He died. I
mhm,
spent 32 years with that man. We had children together, we traveled the world, we served in the army together.
mhm,
His death doesn't just make everything about him disappear. It just means that his journey in this world was over, and I'm having to live past his existence.
mhm.
And I will tell you, his deathversary and his birthday rip me apart still. So I take off work. I'm like, "You know what? I ain't gonna be no good to y'all, so I'm not gonna be no good to me." So
Right.
if it's on a weekday, I take off of work
Mhm,
because I'm gonna be, dysfunctional. I'm gonna be disassociating. I'm gonna be thinking about all the birthdays we celebrated for him. I'm gonna think about the events that led up to his death. And that person ain't trying to be nobody's lead. That
r
person is not fit to be anybody's supervisor,
r
answering questions, sitting in a meeting, talking about some shenanigans I could care less about.
yeah.
So I tap out.
Mm,
And this year, I wanna say his birthday was on a Saturday. So I went down to the beach and did a sunrise, live. People met me there, like, at Oh Dark 30, but it was the best thing to release, to
wow.
talk about my husband, to
Mhm,
talk about how I was feeling, and then I spent the rest of the day with our son, doing Jeep stuff because I have a Jeep Wrangler. We found different murals and took pictures of it. But and I learned that I wanna say like the 3rd or 4th year in, ain't nobody working because this is a crap show. So
mhm,
the best thing I can do is give myself space to look at photos because I can start feeling I call like in my triggering season from about March 1st, February, getting toward the end of February till June, because March is when he passed. And then is we had the nerve to get married the day after my birthday. Don't
wow,
do it
wow.
because that took so long for me just to enjoy my birthday. Then it was our wedding anniversary, then Mother's Day, and then his birthday and Father's Day. So right after June, I start seeing where the mail has stacked up, different things have happened because I'm mentally disassociated. I'm functional.
Mhm.
Before, like the first 2 years between March and June, baby, don't talk to me because
Right.
I was a hot mess. Now I'm functional. I see it coming over me and just go, I clear out my calendar between like March and June. If it is not absolutely necessary, you're gonna hear a lot of no's from me
Mm.
because I don't have the bandwidth to give to anyone else but myself.
Mhm. That's good. I say that's healthy selfishness, and people have to do it. They have to realize it has to be done. I am curious, and I know you say your husband now, understands the grief process from your previous husband. How was it always like that? Like from day one? That's a beautiful thing. I mean, that's beautiful. We were having that conversation like the other day about relationships and men that are selfish. And I'm like, how do you process that? Like how I don't know.
Mm, so when you say for me,
Mhm.
so my current husband, my chapter 2, while we were dating, we had gone out to a restaurant with my sister because my sister lives next door. She lives in this area. We had went out to a restaurant to eat, and then she went back to her place. We came to my place to watch some TV, and I was getting some water or something for us to drink, and I'm walking towards him, and as I'm walking towards him, I go, "I've lived here a year. This is not what I thought it was gonna look like moving to Virginia," because Mark he'd already taken a job here, and I was trying to get a job here. And I was like, "My husband died, and there's this strange dude in this condo that I've lived in by myself." And I'm looking at him, and I just started bawling.
Mm.
And he was watching television, and he looked at me, and he comes over, and he takes the glass, and he puts them down, and he goes, "What's going on? Are you okay?" And I was like, "You seem like a nice enough guy." I said, "But this is the 1-year anniversary of me living here, and though I planned on moving here to Virginia, this is not how I thought it was gonna be." And he said, "You never have to worry about feeling bad about your husband." He said, "You had an amazing marriage." He said, "You've had something I wish I had and most people do. Do you want me to stay? Do you want me to leave? Can I touch you or what do you want?" And I was like, "See, this is how people get draws. You playing like this, sister." And I'm over here trying to keep myself together. And at that moment, I was like, "We just may have something here." I didn't have to put on my dating profile, "I will always love my dead husband," and you
Yeah.
have enough kahunas to understand me missing him ain't got nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
So, he showed up like that in the very initial part of our dating and has been that way going forward. Right now, I'm in a doctoral program, and he's like, "How much homework do you have? What are you doing? How's this gonna help your foundation?" And da da da. He is my biggest cheerleader in
Good.
what I do.
Mhm.
And I actually did a podcast with him and another gentleman that married a widow, and both of these men confident about who they are.
Mhm.
The spouse died. Who are you in competition with?
Right. Right.
And I hear people that are divorced talk about their late spouse. Why do you think I ain't gonna talk about my dead husband?
Mhm.
Like, I spent 32 years with him. We have 2 children. We have a whole life. Who I am for those 32 years was intertwined with his existence. I cannot hardly talk about Mark and not talk about myself.
Right.
So when we're around my friends that I have and there's Mark stories that come up, I see Fred leaning in, learning more about him, listening or adding commentary, but there's never been a place about don't talk about him. But I don't compare Fred to Mark. I didn't try to make Fred a junior Mark or do anything like that. I met him for the man that he was,
That's
and
good.
I love him. And the woman that I am is not the same person I was with Mark because 32 years of living created who I am now. And then surviving my husband's death has changed me in such a way that who I am showing up with Fred is different. Like, that man got some clothes on the floor in the bathroom. You know what? I don't care. Now,
Right.
now when that was Mark, I was like, "Can't you pick up those clothes? Can't you do it?" But the idea of something you said early on, life is short.
Mhm.
And the likelihood of me being widowed twice and outliving him is a strong possibility.
Yeah,
I ain't worrying about the drawers on the floor.
that's right. That's
Now
right.
he cooks. Ooh, child.
Oh, that's good.
So you know what? It's like the things I may have thought were things you have to be all in the tussy about, not
Mm,
so much.
yeah. Yeah. Yep, I've learned that. I guess and then, how did your children or maybe I should put it this way, what tools did you, use for your children to get through, losing their father? And I know it looks different. Like I said, my son was very close to my mom. He's 17 now, so he was 10 at the time, and it was and is, I still feel, it's very traumatic for him. We have him in therapy, and he said it is helpful. But I had no clue that he was even thinking at a young age about ending his life. He didn't tell me till 4 years later.
Mm.
So what do you say to children, going through that or as a parent going through that process with your children? What did that look like?
That is a good question. First of all, I say to the parents, your child is experiencing grief.
Mhm.
Kids go right back to school. They say kids are resilient. Their parent is gone.
Yeah.
They may not have the words for it.
Mm,
So there are different organizations that are specific to children in grief. Find those organizations, go to our website and look them up. On our website under resources, we have books on to reference on dealing with grief with children. Be proactive. If you are hurting, and this person passed the funeral, everybody's gone home, and you are left with the remnants of your life. You may have been trying to take, maybe your spouse took the kids to exercise, you did this, and da 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 da. Now all that weight is on you.
mhm,
You're going to be under pressure.
mhm,
Your kids are probably going to have to pick up doing things they didn't do because now the dynamics of the household is different. Give them space to talk.
mhm,
Reach out to groups of adults that are dealing with young children that are grieving. Those resources are on our website because even though everyone's journey may be different, you'll be able to pick up little nuggets from each person's story and situation. Go, oh, that may work for this child. That may work for that child. And if you're struggling for that, email me at widowhoodrealtalk@gmail.com. Unfortunately, I have different widows and widowers I know that have children and what they've done. I have a widow who was pregnant when her husband passed. I have a widow who
uh,
had a toddler, or so the dynamics of connecting with someone that can resonate with how you feel, not trauma bonding, but a
mhm,
healthy idea of people sharing coping skills and how you manage that so you can sustain on your own is empowering.
mhm,
My children were adults, and I know for me, the first 6 months after their dad passed, I was silent. I
mm,
didn't have much to give to them because I was struggling on my own trying to figure out what to do for Tina.
mhm,
So Mark passed in March of 2017, and then in December, we got together for Christmas, and I apologized for them. I was like, "Your dad died, and I was dysfunctional."
mhm.
I had to be admitting that for myself that I was like, "He died?" I mean, I know people die, but we sat in the front row like this, like,
Yeah,
"What?"
yeah,
And I had to find myself again before I could find them, and being honest with them. I know some people cry in the shower, they cry in their car. They find spaces where they can do that because it's too much. They don't want their children. Maybe I know some people hide their grief from their children.
that
Some
was me.
people find the space to share it with their
Mm,
children. Some people, the therapy, all those different things, and understand each child is going to be different because they have a different relationship with that parent. But your grief and your child's grief, it's okay if it doesn't look the same. It's
mhm.
okay if all your children don't grieve the same, but their parents gone, even if it was a good or bad relationship with the parent, their non-existence is impacting that child.
That's good. You hit the nail on the head because that was me. I was thinking, well, since I'm gonna and I didn't have a term at the time, I was just doing it. But I'm thinking, well, since I'm suppressing mine, I'm gonna suppress everyone's, like, and I forced my children, well, my son, my daughter was just born. I feel like God gave me my daughter, and then he received my mom because my daughter was a month and a half when my mom passed away. So a lot of my pregnancy, I don't remember, just going through that, whole process of just, not believing that my mom could possibly not be here. Everything was just a blur. But after it happened, I just said, okay, my son's 10. He'll go to school. He'll be so inundated with work. He won't think about, I mean, with schoolwork, he won't think about it. He'll come home. He'll play his game. I just felt like it would go away for him and I wouldn't have to even have the conversation. And I don't want people to feel like that is the case. Like, there are so many children out there that are suffering from loss due to their parents just not talking about it, not dealing with it, not asking questions. And I had to apologize to him like you, and I said, "I didn't know what I was doing. I felt like if I didn't talk about it to you, it would keep you from being sad." And I realize now that was not the case. So when he opened up and he said, "I didn't wanna live if Nana wasn't gonna be here," then I felt like the worst parent ever. Me trying to be the best parent and protecting him from grief ended up being, I wasn't such a great parent because I didn't allow him the space he needed to get it out. And so I'm making up for that now. And he kept saying, "No, it's okay. You didn't know. And thank you for getting me therapy." Because at first he was like, "Is therapy for crazy people?" And I'm like, "No, no." So now he loves it. He has a great therapist and she can talk to him about things that I can't necessarily, get out of him, or things he may want to cry in front of her and not me. So that's a good thing to do, is to let your kids express grief and not try to save them from being sad, because it doesn't work. It doesn't work.
I would say that you were the best parent you could be with the knowledge that you had. And you did everything you knew to do based on that. And as you learn more, you did something different. I think we try to assess our we try to assess our past situation on our current knowledge. And that's like trying to tell somebody today what yesterday's lottery's numbers were. That is not how you win the lottery. But
Yeah,
I know yesterday's lottery numbers, so can you say I'm a winner? If you knew what you knew now then, you would have done that. But
that's
you
right.
all you had is what you had, and as you learn more, you're learning to do better with that information.
True. That's true. Thank you for that. Yeah, because when he told me that day, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm sorry," but I had a bawling session because I was just like, "Oh my gosh, like, I didn't know, I'm sorry," I just thought this was the right way to do it. I was trying to protect him, but again, trying to force him to do what I do, which is to protect ourselves from the hurt, you know, before it comes, and so, yeah, that wasn't I'm learning. I'm still learning. This is a day-to-day process.
And not only are you learning, but you're sharing with others. I wanna thank you so much for this
Yeah.
conversation. I'm going to say something to the listeners, and then I would ask you to say whatever your final thoughts are, how people can reach you, and wrap up this conversation.
Okay.
I wanna say thank you for being a part of this discussion. I am sorry for the loved one that you have lost that is no longer here, but I'm glad you found us. And I know this conversation was helpful and encouraging.
Thank you so much again for the opportunity. And there are many places that I could have set up my camera, for this conversation, but I intentionally sat in front of this clock. And if anyone paid attention, it hasn't moved. And that's what grief looks like. It feels like time has stopped. But I want to let, everyone know that even when it feels like that, we have to keep living. And again, give yourself grace to go through the processes. Just, if you go back 2 steps, it's okay. Just take another step the next day, but the process, has to keep going. Just keep going. Don't give up. Don't give up on life. Your loved ones wouldn't want you to do that. And reach out for support, accept connections, even if you're not a person that likes to be, on camera like me, or if you don't want to be on camera like Tina and I are doing now. If you're introverted, there are places you can go to type. You can just text or message people, but just don't go through it alone. And like I said before, just live paycheck to paycheck. check on yourself and pay attention to your emotions, emotionally, physically, and even spiritually on this grief journey. Just keep going.
Thank you.
Thank you for spending another episode with Widowhood Real Talk. If you found the contents of today helpful, share the episode to anyone you know who may need it. Subscribe to the show and tune in to Widowhood Real Talk each week. Then, visit widowhood-realtalkwithtina.org to join the community and access additional resources. Remember, you are not alone in this journey.